Welcome, everybody, to the inaugural Options Trading for Beginners live with Dan Sheridan. Dan, how are you doing this afternoon slash
Oh,
this late morning?
doing great, everybody. Looking forward to uh, kind of going over the basics. It's like over the weekend I watched. Uh, don't ask me why. I'm a Chicago Bear fan, but I wasn't watching the Bears. I was watching with my wife the movie Hoosiers. Do you remember that, Troy? And in the movie Hoosiers, with is that Hackman was the famous
Yep, Gene Hackman.
Gene
Yep.
Hackman. But the thing he berated these kids with constantly was it's all in the fundamentals. It's the fundamentals. And I'm excited about this because I get more out of this than anybody. By focusing on this, many times I miss the fundamentals. I miss the basics. And so we can all grow no matter whatever level. I'm picking up stuff. I'm just as I was thinking about this over the weekend, kind of beginner stuff, many stuff I've missed. So I need to get back to the basics. The dribbling, the left hand, the
It's
lefty
all
layup, the
it's
righty
all
layup.
about the left hand layup is still, you know, the older you get, it's if you can do it, it's the thing that that taught you that you spent the time when you were younger. Dan, listen, real quick, if it's all right, what I'm going to do is, like all shows on the Option Omega network, we have an intro song.
And I'm
And so
scared of what Troy puts together.
uh,
Troy's the master musician here. I gotta
Dan hasn't seen it, as is my custom. So we'll do that. We'll explain kind of, Dan, when I come back from the theme song, we'll explain how the format's going to go. It's Monday, Wednesday, Friday,
yeah,
what we're going to try to do, and then we'll dive into today.
sounds good.
Okay, here we
All
go.
right.
You don't wake up knowing markets, kid. Everybody starts brand new. First you learn what moves, what waits, and what risk can really do. No racing clocks, no magic tricks, no get rich overnight. Just learning how to place a trade and sleep cozy and tight. No shortcuts, no loud claims, just rules you understand. Know what you're risking, know your why. Keep a steady hand, one trade at a time, that's how it's done. Slow is smooth and smooth is smart. You learn before you earn, my friend, that's how confidence starts. This ain't a sprint, it's a longer game. So pull up a chair and plan. Welcome to Options for Beginners with Dan.
Troy, that took my breath away. That was
There we go.
wonderful.
Well, we tried to keep it. We tried to keep it PG,
Yeah.
which is the goal. So, Dan, this show, just to remind people, it's for people. If you're completely learning options, we're going to try to take this slow and steady, and not necessarily try to get you from 0 to 100, straight away. Inevitably, options are complicated, so we will move. You might think to yourself, "Well, they're moving pretty fast for that." That happens, but you can come back. This is going to be one of the things Dan wanted me to communicate early on is that we want this to be an interactive show. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat. We can get to them. If not this session, next session. It'll be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And Dan, our thought is we're going to take you from learning about what options are all the way to how to automate trades, and so it's really trying to take you from zero to driving, which there's a lot to that. But if there was ever a person to do it, it's you. So real quick, Dan, could you give, we know who you are and we know you're kind of the legend in the space, but who is Dan Sheridan? And tell us a little bit about where you came from and, why you're such an options guy.
Well, I grew up in Chicago, and in the and in Chicago, especially back, things have changed a bit. but you had three. Well, we'll go back before that. Yeah, grew up in Chicago, lived in Chicago my whole life. Dad was a Chicago policeman for 40 years. My mother was an emergency room nurse. And, so just lived in Chicago. When you're a policeman, you have to live in Chicago. You can't live outside it. So we were always in Chicago. So I went to high school downtown Chicago. So I'd take the train. So I got used to taking the train and the bus all around Chicago. I didn't really need a car. So, since I was 10 years old, we would take a bus and a train with the friends to go play basketball, one part of the city or whatever. And it was always fun. So when I went to high school, did the same thing. Took 45 minutes or an hour to get to downtown. And so I was used to that. Went to college downtown at DePaul University. And I tried being an accounting major, but after flunking cost accounting 3-4 times, the accounting professor put his hand around me. Dan, this might not be for you. I said, you know what? You're 100% right.
I agree with you.
You're 100% right. So in finance class one day, Carl Luft, I think he just retired, he was a finance professor at DePaul. He was teaching a course on options. This seems interesting. And he talked about the Chicago Board Options Exchange. And where I went to the business school at DePaul University, it was 2 blocks from the CBOE and the Board of Trade, 3 blocks. So you had 3 of the big key exchanges in the country: CBOE, Chicago Board Options Exchange, Chicago Mercantile, and the Board of Trade, 3 blocks. So I walked over to the CBOE one day after his class. I said, this seems interesting. And I saw, right? Guys getting out of work wearing gym shoes, T-shirts, no ties, right? That was my fear of working at a bank or something.
Oh, yeah.
And they get out of work at like 3:00 and they were happy. And so, I called my mom and dad. I said, I have no idea what they're doing, but they look like they're making some kind of living, right? They get out early, they wear gym shoes, they seem happy, And so that was it. That was my deep thinking. I enjoyed and it seemed like a fast pace over there. So after I, got a job down there, and I ended up being down there like 22 years at the CBOE. I worked at
Didn't realize you were at 22 there.
Yeah, somewhere around there. Yeah. And I worked with John Nigerian and Pete Nigerian for most of it. I was honored to work with them. And John and Pete are still in the industry, and that's where you learn the trading. I was taught by 2 people. I have to mention them: Marty O'Connell and Jim Piper. Back then in the early 80s, you think about risk management and the Greeks and adjusting trades and these butterflies and trading. No one knew this stuff. There weren't that many people. So Marty O'Connell and Jim Piper were kind of the pioneers of teaching a lot of this. So I happened to work for a gentleman who was a great guy, Daniel Don. Matter of fact, have you ever heard, Troy, like in the restaurant suppliers? I hate to say this, but if you ever go to a restaurant, or if you're ever in the washroom, you'll see most of the stuff in there is made by DON Company.
Oh, interesting.
Edward Don and Company was his dad. So when I worked with him, he would pay O'Connell and Piper, because he was to teach them the risk management. So we would go over, all the trades we had, and they would go over them with us, and teach, okay, when it goes up, where are you going to adjust? What are you going to adjust? What are you going to do here? Vols are low. Are you going to buy? Are you going to sell? So they really learned it. And then that's why I met John Nigerian, because he was kind of hooked up with this O'Connell and Piper. But then John went to the pits. And so once he went to the trading pits, we talked one day and he said, why don't you come down and learn the pit? So I really worked most of the time with John, and working with John it was wonderful. I mean, it was, I couldn't tell you how much fun it was working with those guys because they had a lot of fun, but they were very good at what they did. John and Pete Nigerian, I know they were on CNBC Fast Money for a long time. But in like 2000, this might be more of an introductory than.
Listen, it's important. It's important for people to realize this. I'm going back and forth to your face.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that you have to know straight away if you're going to trade options is Dan just did it. It's inevitable. Anybody who's ever been successful in trading is you have to have mentors. And Dan just mentioned his mentors.
Yeah. And here's the misconception about, my dad was a policeman. We got a lot of firemen in the family. It was a job. I wasn't looking at this, whether you made, the reality, it was a great job, right? And I don't mean just, the pay. Some years you made less than the normal guy, the normal working job. Some years you made a bit more, a little bit more, but it was a job, right? I was down there for 20 some years, where there's some people who got, did better than others. But the thing to remember, if you say, for most people, like I was with Mercury Trading. Mercury Trading was a small specialist trading options group at the CBOE. I mean, very successful. But the thing is, we were all, it did well, but it's like any other business, right, Troy? Do you own a house or do you not own a house? You know what I mean? Like I was I was down there with 4 kids and I worked with John and I loved it. And it paid well, but we weren't an owner. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Like I could stand, we'd be in the pit and we're trading. The guy next to us, let's say he made the same amount we did. I might get a smaller because I was part of this team, which I enjoyed.
Yeah.
But if he was an owner, if he was the owner of that seat, leased the seat, he's getting 100%. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
It's like he owned it. So, but it was, it was a good business. You learn, but it was a craft, right? It was like, that's when I mentioned like the Hoosiers and fundamentals. This was fundamentals, right? This was risk management. And it wasn't extreme discipline, right? And that's where I think the problem with retail traders is they really can't get fired, right? I mean, you can get fired if you lose enough money. But like in the pit, if I were to ever, in the world of risk management, if I would have said, hey, I'm adjusting at this point, right? Or whatever, and I didn't do it more than one time, you're done.
Yeah, you're
right?
done.
So it was a different mentality, but that's what I try to bring in teaching people is just, it's the basics, right?
Yeah.
And not to look at just getting good at the craft. You're not in this to make like any business. If you make a little more, that's fine, but you're in it to do it the right way. And I think the fundamentals haven't changed. Whether you have 0-day options, they just move faster, right?
That's
or you have anything else. It's the same way. And people at the CBOE were more volatility traders. They weren't as big into technicals, right? I still think people spend way too much time on technicals, right?
100%.
It's like a Charlie Brown security blanket, right? I mean, there's some people that are very good at technicals. There's some people out there that I'll watch that are good at technicals, but I think focus on the craft, right? Yep. And you don't see enough people doing that.
So this is the thing is the thing of the craft. I've said this before on the O show. Dan is my mentor. Dan taught me options a along with some other people, but Dan was kind of the first that I kind of dug deep on and went from there. And so I have always said it's important to have mentors. Even something that's data driven like Option Omega, there's no substitute for wisdom explaining what you're seeing in data. And so that's what this show's about. And Dan, I want to move even slower than, it's so easy to jump in, but like when you said the word retail, I mean, trusty sidekick Matt's here. I'll let Matt take that one. What is retail? What do we talk? When we say what is a retail trader? What's a retail trader versus a pro trader?
That's a good question. That's a good question. But I will. Can I just back you one thing before we hit the retail? I just want to go back once and just say, I've been teaching for about 20 some years, but I'll be honest with you. If you said to me, and I think if people take this approach, I've learned more from people in our community and people in the OO community now. I've learned from that. You learn from other people. I mean, there's some people in our community now, right? I mean, I think of a couple of people, people now, they're phenomenal, right? Or people in the OO, you're learning. So it's like it's this constant learning about different stuff. But retail is just simply versus professional. Professional to me would be I'm in the options desk at Goldman Sachs or something like that, right? A professional isn't that you're doing this full time, right? Many, I mean, you're doing it I mean, people say, well, are you a full-time trader? What does that mean, right? Full-time trade, does that mean you have to dock in if you have to put 40 hours in? No, you're looking at it for your income, right? Or that's what you're trying to do with it. So retail would be, you're not with a big firm. You're not with a prop firm or something like.
We're all retail.
Yeah, we're all retail. And I think, echoing something I know I heard Tom Sosna say recently in a webinar, you have this percentage is like the smart people are the institutions, the dummies are the retail public. That's not true. I can tell you that's not true.
Right.
From being in the pits for a lot of years, that is not true, right? Because a lot of pit traders, see, to me, retail traders are really the smart. I mean, they put the time in. They learn the business. They've really gone over it. I mean, think about a lot of times institution, you're almost on the sell end, right? I'm work at Goldman Sachs. I'm a broker and I have a customer who maybe knows something and wants to buy 12,000 micron calls, right? Well, are they, they're not talking decay or gamma. They have a customer who knows something and they buy 12,000 calls or something. So I think, I think, again, just saying what Tom Sosnoff said, retail drives this game now. It's not the institutions. It's the retail people. The institutions will follow the retail. I think the smart money is the retail. I really do. And I think the education is catching up. I mean, a lot of good people teaching the business now, but I think the tools, I mean, and I say this very honestly, I've made a lot of changes since with the Option Omega, because now it's the data. I would think like Matt was just talk about today. Matt brought up, doing 0 day. We were talking about reverse iron condors, where you're like buying an out of the money strangle, selling it further out of the money strangle. The graph is like this. You make money if it goes either way. And Matt made a comment, with the data, he'd like to, do you just sell out one side as it goes up? And that's how I've always traded it. But he made a comment, the data shows you're no better off if you do it, if you just leave it, right? Let it do what it's supposed to do. So to me, the data is really helpful to doing it, because, if you ask why do you do some of the things you do, that's the way we've always done it. So at least the data is helping us all intelligently tweak things, right?
So the question to me, Dan, is like, if someone's watching this and you're like, I looked up options educators and I saw Dan Sheridan and then I saw the show. Why should someone trade options? There's so many different things to do. There's crypto now. There's Polymarket. You can bet on Venezuelan attacks. You can do all this stuff.
Yeah.
Why trade options?
Well,
at this point.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny when Troy said we're going to talk about why trade options. I wanted to see, I had my thoughts, but there were a million things. So shout out to AI. I AI'd and I put
AI. Listen, we got Dan Sheridan AI.
Yeah, we got AI.
That's the level of.
And I just to see what they say. Why trade options? To me, and again, I have to put the word craft at everything because I think whatever you pick, right? Whatever you're going to spend your time, whether it's on collecting coins or trading silver or trading, I've got a nephew who's trading. He literally trades Pokemon cards back and forth all day. The point is 3 reasons to trade options, right? And I'll get into this. And I look at this, I think everybody should be doing it to some degree. But number 1, speculation and leverage, right? That's not
love speculation.
But that's where I think options gets the bad name because it's like, I'm thinking 30 years ago, 20 years ago, you call up your broker and you say, hey, I want to trade options. What did you say? I want to trade options. Say it again. Options. Hey, this is just true story. Hey, who in our firm, Lehman or whatever, who trades options? I don't know. I think Harry does, but he's out. Does anybody but Harry trade options? No. So Dan, call back in a week. I think we got a guy that talks options. Harry comes in. Harry, what do you know? Well, they're risky. But what do you do, Harry? Well, maybe covered rights. That would be it. Sell a call. So did you get any? So if you said to me, why was it slow? Options coming into the mainstream? Because the broker stunk. Most of them, right? Most of them in the early days. I mean, it wasn't, I shouldn't say it stunk. It just, they didn't feel it was, in my opinion, enough to put resources and to get some decent people there, right? It was like we're selling other stuff, right? So obviously things changed back then. So speculation or leverage, I think people get a bad name for options gets a bad name because people misuse it, right? I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to go buy some GameStop or I'm going to buy whatever, some calls. I'm not really sure how this works, but it seems fun. But leverage is a wonderful thing, right? If using with a little bit of sanity, right? You can buy 100 shares of Apple. It's going to cost you, it's $260, right? So that's going to cost you $26,000 to buy 100 stinking shares of stock, right? If it goes up $1, you make 100 divided by 26,000. Wonderful, right? I mean that's not bad. It's just that's it, right?
Can I just stop you right there real quick? And I think Matt actually can help with this a little bit, because, like, to someone who's new to options, who are learning, trying to learn, like, what are you talking about? GameStop's the perfect example, Dan, in my mind. Because, Matt, what was GameStop at before the run in 2021 or whatever?
I mean, so the run was at the end of January in 2021. And I was trading GameStop in 2020. And I'm going off memory here. I think I had some $6 calls when it was like $2. I sold them. They like tripled. I sold them. Obviously had no idea. And I bought back in when it was in the teens in the fall. I bought shares and options. And so it was in the teens in the fall of 2020. And then in during the run, I think it got up to somebody might know. I think it got up to $500 pre-market extended hours.
Oh my! In the same year that it was 6.
The following, so it was in the single digits the prior summer.
Yeah.
And then the run was in January. So, I
And
mean,
what-
it was like a once in a lifetime maybe thing,
Yeah.
at least on that volume.
And what Dan's saying is, like, let's say you bought 100 shares when it was
Yeah.
$6.
Yeah.
That's $600. And let's say it went to 500, right?
Yeah.
Well, that would have been a huge gain for you.
Yeah.
With options, you can experience that gain without the down payment
Right.
of the $600.
Yeah. I think
That's
the highest
leverage.
they had, the highest strike for a while was $40. And you could buy leaps on it. So if anybody doesn't know what a leap is an abbreviation, and the abbreviation is a term that people usually refer to options that are a year out. That's not technically correct. I think it stands for, I'll look up the exact technical definition, but a leap option is a longer term option. And by the way, I love leaps. I was actually just checking on some leap options I have on an equity, and it kind of relates to this discussion. I have an equity, and listen, we'll probably talk about some of our positions. I'm not going to talk about this one because it's kind of thinly traded and it's a pharma company, and I don't normally do those. But I followed this company for 5 years, and it experienced a huge run up. I started buying shares when it was around $4. It's in the 30s now. And when it got to like $20, I got super nervous because I had like 5x to my money. So what I actually did was I sold a portion, and then I used options to both de-risk and lever up at the same time. I bought leap options. So I bought them last year and I bought them for 2027. So I have another year for these options, and these leaps are very deep in the money already. And so what I was able to do is I was able to lower my total, because this is the reason I don't want to talk about this one. It's a pharma. We'll talk about some, just not this one. It could go to zero. And so I was able to take some money off the table, but like actually get more exposure by buying these leaps, because a leap option at the money 2 years out when I bought them is much, much cheaper than 100 shares. And a single leap option gives me the same, it's 100 shares. Yep. So obviously my cost basis is going to be different. It's the strike plus whatever my leap cost, but options are amazing. So
I derailed you, Dan, but that was my thought, is just the idea of people don't understand what we're talking about sometimes with that leverage. Like, oh, it's leverage. And here people see leverage risky. It definitely can be risky. But the premise is there that it's a leverage product, meaning you can get outsized gains for smaller upfront capital.
You can't, and it just, again, with a few basic bits of understanding, like if Troy brought up, I don't know if it'd be just to bring up a basic long call, right? If we could just to have this discussion, when people are buying calls, all right. So here's Costco, which, this is an interesting stock. Yeah, everybody has a Costco near them. I have one within a mile, and you always go in there and say to yourself, they must be giving stuff away. There's people here that are literally elbow you to get out of the. It's like
really, the great American companies.
Yeah, great American companies. But Costco, if I said to you, were there many stocks down last year? You'd say, no, not many. Costco was down in 2025. But it's if you look at the first 3, 4, 5 days of the year or whatever, Costco is going nuts, right? It's like it's trying to make up for what it did. But if you look at a call, right, what's Costco trading at the stock, Troy?
I'm saying 937 is what Costco's trading.
So,
Wolf.
Yeah, so $93,000 to buy 100 shares of stock or whatever, unless you do it on leverage. And so you make $100 if it goes up. So what if we bought, just to have an example, let's say you bought a 937. How about a 950 call? But let's go out 60 days or 67. Yeah. A 950 call. And what does that cost, Troy? The cost of that?
$3,400.
All right. So instead of putting up $90,000, and if it goes up $1, you make $100. So here, folks, I'm just using this as an example. We're out a couple months, and we're buying a strike, right? And I think when you're in the area of buying calls, 3 things to keep in mind: the strike, the duration, and the most important thing in the world of options, sizing, right? Because, this is a speculative trade. So let's say we buy one of this today, right? We buy a strike, and this is the 950 strike, and Costco is trading at 937, basically, right, Troy?
Yeah, 937.58.
Yeah. Now, people say options are risky. Now, let me say they're risk. Yeah, driving a car is risky if you don't know what you're doing. Agree?
Agree.
So I think with this options, we say, okay, what do we got here? I don't have to put up 93,000 shares to buy 100 shares of stock. I'm going to put up on the 950 strike, we're putting up $34 for the call, so $3,400.
And real quick, I'm so again, not to derail anything, but again, I do want to start with the premise that I don't assume anybody knows anything. So when he just said $34, a common nomenclature in options is it's that price times 100 because each contract represents 100 shares. So $34, as Dan just said, is $3,400 because you times it 100.
Yeah, and they would call that premium, right?
That's right.
That's the price of the option. It's premium. Your debit, like in the upper right-hand corner, it says $3,430 debit, but you're paying $34, right? That's the debit that you buy it for.
Yep.
And so you have your purchasing power. If you have 10 grand in your account, just went down by $3,400.
That's right.
That money is at play. That money is being utilized. And so let's see what we just did here. Costco's at $937. We bought a strike at $950. Roughly 67 days out, Troy?
Yeah, 67.
All right. So what does that mean, everybody? What are we up against? We bought an out-of-the-money call. What does that mean? It means that we're basically saying with Costco at 937, we're buying something at 950. We're saying we want to buy a strike at 950. So technically, we could buy the stock at $95, right? I mean,
that's exactly right.
Why the heck would you buy stock at $95 when it's at 937, right? So we're paying this premium as $67, or excuse me, that's the right. We're paying the premium of what would we say, Troy?
$34.30.
$34 basically. And so the idea is we have 2 months for this to start going up, right? We would love that 937 Costco to go up to like 960 or 970 or 980. Probably won't go that high.
That's right.
But what we're really looking for is the yield, right? We're looking for, if Costco goes up for the next couple days or 3-4 days, that $34 could go to 35. It could go to 36 or 37. And in most cases, I could sell it out and make a couple $100, but a couple $100 and $3,400, right?
That's right.
Which is a heck of a return, right? The things you have to understand are when you're buying a call and you're thinking something's going to go up, number one, make sure you have enough duration if you're wrong, right?
What do you mean by duration, Dan?
Duration means if I look at Costco and say, first of all, Costco's already been up the last 3-4 days, but if I think Costco's going up, what do I know? Right? I mean, I may have some reason in terms of the timing. What do I know when it's going to? So I got to give myself enough time to be wrong. 2 months, 4 months, right?
Yeah.
And so you have duration. And then the strike prices, we said Costco's at 937. I could buy a 935 strike or a 930 strike. That would be in the money when the strike is below the stock price. But those will cost more because they're worth something. The strike that we're looking at here, the 950 strike, if today were expiration in 2 months, it's worth zero, right? So we're paying this $34. It's almost like you think of hot potato, right?
Yep.
I like this, but I don't want to hold this too long. I don't want to hold this till expiration. I'd like to try to make 10, 20, 30, 40% on this and run for the hills. I'm just giving a general, there's a lot going on here. But the point is, if we go up, if Costco goes up to 950, right, from 937, and we're buying the 950 strike, if it sits there for the next 2 months, the stock could be up $13 and it's going to go to zero, right? As Troy's showing it in the modeling there. So you're dealing with, when you buy a call, when you're thinking of options, you have to get your mind, it's like Cool Hand Luke. You got to get your mind right. You're dealing with, and this is where we probably need to spend more time, is with strike. You know, what are the concepts to get a good feel of leverage? What are the concepts that you have to know inside and out? Strike prices. What's the difference between the in the money, at the money, and out of the money strike prices? It's going to cost more when it's in the money, less at the money, much less out of the money. Why are the out of the money calls less than at the money? Because it's more of a long shot.
That's exactly right. And what you said, Dan, kind of gets to the point. And the beauty of options, listen, it's like we said this morning. I'm getting kind of pumped too, because I love. Sometimes you forget when you're trading options all day the beauty of it. I really think it's a beautiful product, and in a weird way, really, because what we just said is, you might think to yourself, your first pass, you're like, I'm trying to learn all these phrases they're talking about, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about phrases. We'll break them down, but the best way to do it is just be here with us. We're taking it slow. We're going to do it. Is, you think to yourself, to go back to the chart, well, why? Okay, if I really want to replace it with stock, why would I buy whichever you're describing as out of the money? That's not the same thing. Well, you don't have to, like Dan said. You could actually go something called delta right here, and you could say, let's say we're going to do as close to 100 as we can.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's 18,000, right?
Yeah.
Now you've still cut that's still a heck of a lot less than 95,000, which is what 100 shares would cost, right? But you get more delta. But what this is actually kind of a complete, you're trying to do parity with 100 shares. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. With options, the beauty of it is you actually don't have to do that, because what Dan was saying, if we go to that 950, there's things that are helping us besides price. Like, we're used to just price goes up, I make money. But options actually are valued with more than just price. They're valued using time. They're valued using something called vega, the volatility of a thing, and the magic thing, the thing that Dan, I think maybe we could talk about Wednesday, explaining why you might want to do that, and is how delta and this other Greek meaning the pricing model, interplays, and it's this beautiful thing called gamma.
Well, and that's why I think, and even if we took a small, modeled a small trade and followed it, you almost have to, you got to park on it, right? Park on a long call for a good week because there's so much involved there. So in other words, maybe we'll make a little list of what are the key concepts to get at this beginning level, just as we're trying to get into the door of options. What is an option? What is a call option? Well, to get at what is a call option, some of the, understand strike, duration, extrinsic value, intrinsic value, delta. I mean, they're just part of it, but they help you make decisions, right? And volatility and theta, because, when you buy a call option, how do you know it's a good price?
Yep.
It's like, when you get into this concept of volatility, let's say you're going to buy every Monday, you're going to buy a 7-day option or whatever, a 7-day option. Well, is it a good price? How do you know it's a good price?
That's right.
Compared to other 7-day options. It's like, I used to go to the grocery store and I'd buy a pint of blueberries and I'd come home and my wife would be like, "Oh boy, you didn't pay that." I said, "I paid whatever they told me to pay." She goes, "That's the highest price it's been in 2 years." And so that's how you can get with options. You can get an idea of how do they historically, is $3 for a 7-day option at the money, is that good or bad? So you're getting some measurements, but I think you have to look at what I've noticed in the retail sector, Matt and Troy, is up until about 10 years ago, I'd hear people just say, "Okay, we're going to buy this call," and that's it. They didn't even look at volatility. They didn't even want to get into it. I'm like, in myself, I'm cringing. I'm like, they're buying blueberries at $30 a pint,
That's
and they normally are at $7. You do really want them to do that. And that's where, in the world of options, it gives you choices. If something's high volatility and I want to buy it, then I would want to do something like a vertical debit spread, buy a strike at 950, sell a strike at 970, right?
And you get the option of that high price working for you on the other side of the spread.
Yeah. I mean, leverage is wonderful, right? As long as you just have a basic understanding. And so I think maybe it would be good to maybe the next show, we could talk about, what's your checklist at this point of terms you need to have a good grasp on.
Yeah.
Right? What are the 6 or 7 terms, not what you think they mean, what they mean, right?
Yeah.
And then when we start getting into a long call, now we can dial in a lot better. But I think the terminology is going to be important, and maybe as I'm thinking out loud, let's say next show we're going to go on long calls more or whatever the topic. It might be good to start with, for you to get much out of this session, these are the 5 key terms. So we start out with these terms and what they mean. It's like, how invaluable is Matt's the doc? What do you call that? The documentation.
Yeah.
For all in Options Omega Bootcamp, which is free. You go in there, Options Omega Bootcamp, but Matt's got it all documented, so you can get all the words. What does this mean? What does Kager mean? What does all these definitions mean? And I think that helps. But I think getting the right definitions, what is implied volatility? Now we're a ways from that, but I think at the beginning level for next session, the homework would be, what's intrinsic value? What's extrinsic value?
Yeah.
What's the difference between an at the money call 30 days out versus today? Looking at some of these concepts. But I think it's important as you go through these concepts, if you don't have some example like Troy went today, and we brought up Costco, you can get lost in the weeds a little bit. I think you have to bring up real examples and show, okay, here's the intrinsic, here's what you're paying extra. Okay, what's my game plan here? And that's another thing. Most people, I think, what gives options a black eye in terms of leverage is people maybe didn't have the right understanding, but they didn't have a plan. They're going to buy these calls. What are you going to do? We're just going to watch them.
Yeah.
And they'll watch it go up. Then they'll watch the money go all the way down to zero. So I think it's important to have some kind of plan based on the strategy. So maybe, maybe next show focus on some of, being long options, and then we can.
We'll base it around the.
We're learning this too, folks, as far as what's the best way. I've always said this, and I mean this. Teaching beginner option stuff is much harder, in my opinion, from teaching medium and advanced.
Yeah.
I know it sounds weird, but
no, I believe it.
But options are a tough. I mean, Matt, what do you think, Matt? Matt, you started in what, 18 or 19? What would you?
20,
I mean,
the beginning of 20.
Did you think at first all these concepts?
Oh, it's overwhelming.
Yeah, good point. Yeah,
I had no idea what I was doing.
You only learn it by like we said, and we'll do this Wednesday. So Wednesday at 11, we'll be back. We're going to go through some concepts, and we'll look at the concepts. Here's how you learn. We're going to look at the concepts through the lens of a long call. We'll explain what a long call is. We did a while ago, but we'll go deeper with it. But then the beauty of it is it's not some test that you just pass by knowing you say what the concept was. You learn and deep learn by taking those concepts and applying them through different lenses. So we'll take IV, we'll take the Greeks, we'll take all these pricing models, and we'll look at it through the lens of a long call, and then we'll switch to a put vertical, and then we'll look at iron condors, and then we'll look at double calendars. But that's just the theory part. Even looking at it through all the lens, the next step is coming up with a game plan of actually how to turn that into money. We're going to do that as well. And so I'm excited about it. Dan, I appreciate you willing to take the time and just kind of chop it up. And so,
no, it makes it again. It's not easy when you're because I remember when I was learning this stuff, it was like it seemed impossible, right? And it's like you be patient with it. I think once there's examples that are brought in, that's the only way you understand. I mean, real quick, I remember my first job when I was down at the CBOE. I worked for a gentleman who was very good. But here's the thing. My job for him was going to the different pits where he got orders filled. Like he was doing different spreads or ratio spreads and all. And at the end of the day, I'd bring it to him and then he'd quiz me. If the market's going up, do you buy a call or sell a put? I don't know. And I'd be like, Dan, you're not going to get, you got to get this. And I'm like, it was such an abstract concept to me. And so really my first 6 months, until I started looking at trades, I'd flunk these tests at the end of the day. He'd say, okay, we going up. Do you buy a put vertical or sell this? I mean, I'd be like panicking. And so I think it's just, you just have to go through these examples. But I think with the trades, you'll get better at it, right? I mean, we'll go through trades and maybe we could also go through Wednesday about a realistic, okay, let's look at a chart of something maybe real quick. Okay, this stock's been down, or pick a Costco, whatever. Say, if we were going to buy a call in Costco today, at least in the mind, what would we buy in here? Or we could take a cheaper price stock. But I think bringing in, and I'll come up with the key concepts that we need to really tackle this, right? And this could go, and I bet a lot of, because again, I think still a lot of people don't look at all these elements when they're buying a call, right? Many retail people do not look at volatility. And I just think could you survive if you're really good at directional picking? Could you survive without including looking at the volatility of an option? You could. But it's like, why would you, if it can make your game a lot better, right?
Yep, 100%.
Yeah, anyways.
Well, listen, I'm excited about it. I hope you guys are too. It's going to be a journey. But if you're like, I have no idea what anything they talked about, listen, in a couple of weeks, we're going to show you how to be placing trades. Like, trust me, it'll just stick with it. It'll work and you'll learn. So Dan, thank you. I've got a really important seafood lunch coming up with a couple men. So I've got to go eat seafood now, but you guys have a great rest of your trading day, learning day, and we'll be back Wednesday at 11.
Yeah.
Talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.